Ted Greene is one of the most influential guitar players of the last century, yet many of his arrangements are inaccessible because of their great difficulty. Now, if you're a fingerstyle guitar player and you find that your arrangements sound too much like a plain vanilla ice cream truck theme, you may be tempted to add some spice to those, like a Ted Greene arrangement. However, if you've looked at some of his instructional material, you may be turned off by how complicated it looks. So I'm going to show you how you can transform a very simple chord progression into something that sounds a lot more jazzy. The chord progression we're going to start with transforms into this. I'm going to show you a trick that I use for harmonizing my melodies, which goes contrary to anything that you've heard about. Now, when we start listening to a musical piece, we often start from the beginning and go to the end. When we listen or when we read a book, we're going to start at the beginning and go to the end. It actually makes a lot of sense to start at the end. And I'll show you why in a minute. Working from the end to the beginning is kind of a hack that I use when I'm practicing as well. So the chord progression that we're going to use is A minor, D minor, G, and then C. This is A minor, D minor, and then G7, and then C. So very normal 6-2-5-1 progression, which is going to sound like this. Nothing surprising. So what I've done is I've transformed each of these chords into this, which is like an A minor chord with a B flat. And then this is kind of like a D minor chord with an extra C. And then this is going to be a G chord with a flat, A flat, so flat 9. And then I end up with this last chord, which is C 6, I guess. And then there's a G in the bass. So I'm not a super expert in jazz chords, but it's going to sound like this. Now, here's the secret for why we want to work backwards in our arrangement. When we hear a bunch of commonly used chords like A minor, D minor, G, and then C, we are very used to hearing those sequence of chords played in that direction just because it's of the history of all of the music that we've heard. However, if we're going to play a bunch of jazz chords all put together, we're going to be a little bit disoriented. When we hear a common chord progression, it's kind of like following a well-worn path down through the woods. However, if we're going to hear a bunch of strange jazzy chords played one after the other, it's a little bit destabilizing. So we need to add in some guardrails for our listeners. And these guardrails are going to be a descending chromatic line. And now when we're going to start from the end, now we can actually work backwards and see what our starting note is. The chord progression we're used to hearing is A minor to D minor to G to C. So I know at the end I'm going to want to end on this chord, which is going to be a funky sort of C6/9 chord, I guess. And my bass note is going to be G, and the rest of the notes are C, E, and A. Now that I know that the final note is going to be a G, I can work backwards. And so the bass note for the previous chord is going to be A flat, the one just before that, and then the chord that I'm going to start with is going to be on a B flat. That's going to be my chromatic bass line. So A minor chord is going to have a B flat at the bass. The D minor chord will have an A in the bass, and then the fifth chord is going to be a flat 9 in the bass, and then my C chord tonic is going to be the G. Once we've figured out what the notes of our bass line are going to be, we are going to take the notes from the circle of thirds using the notes that are in the key we're playing in C major. We're going to fill out the rest of the harmony using notes that we've plucked from the circle of thirds to build our chord. So my first chord, which is going to be the A minor chord, it's going to be this with a B flat at the bass to sound jazzy enough. The next chord is going to be a D minor 7 chord, and I'm going to put the fifth in the bass. So A, D, F, and C. After that, I'm going to have a G7 chord, but I'm going to add this A flat in it, so it's going to be like a flat 9. And then I'm going to finish on my C6 chord, so it's going to be a C with an added 6, and I can put the G in the bass. Now, the trick with playing these jazzy chords works best if you don't have a capo on your guitar neck because you have access to the full guitar neck. But in some cases, it may actually be better to use a guitar capo when you're doing your arrangement. And that's exactly what I talk about in this video. So I will see you in the next video.